Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I wanted to do a 20-ounce sublimation tumbler. And this video is not going to be one of those videos where the product is perfect, because it's not. I wanted to still make this video and still upload it because I wanted you guys to see that, you know, these things do happen. We're not perfect, we're not machines. So yeah, let's just get into it. I like to say sublimation is not for the weak. I say this because there's a lot of trial and error with sublimation, but once you get the hang of it, the outcome is worth it. So I already trimmed down my design to its size. I bought this image off of Etsy, so I'm not exactly sure what size it really is. Every tumbler is different. This is a 20 ounce, but these things did not help me at all. I found them on Amazon and they're supposed to help you pull the paper together just so it's easier for you to tape. And I did not find these useful. So I would not recommend you buying these. I feel like once you get the hang of taping the seams together, you will be good to go. As for the seams, you want to tape them close together as you can. Make sure there is no overlapping, otherwise when you press it you will be able to see the overlap. Like I said before, this tumbler did not turn out the way I wanted it to. The bottom of my design was longer from one side than it was from the other, and that is because my printer was actually not aligned. So whenever it was feeding my paper, it was pushing my paper off to one side and printing in that direction instead of printing the full sheet or in the middle. But I fixed my printer and I didn't want to reprint this just because it was already very late at night and I was already filming, so I didn't want to stop that either, and I just kind of made it work. But you'll see in the video or throughout the video where it did not work. As you can see, I untaped the top again and I tried it again. It still wasn't lining up even though I had already trimmed it, but like I said, that was because it was my printer error, not, the design. But I still went ahead and pressed this because, like I said, it was already way too late for me to reprint this and I was in the middle of already filming it. But when you have the perfect print, it will meet up at the bottom. You might have to trim off a little bit just because the tumbler is not straight. It does have a curved edge and it won't sublimate around or after the curved edge, so you kind of do want to trim off a little bit. And right here I am taping them, the end, close together as I can. There is, I think, a little bit of the seam did show, but it's because, like I said, my design was not printed correctly. Also, when you're taping this, you want to make sure you really pull the paper together, because when you start to tape both ends and the paper kind of has like a gap, you will and can possibly get ghosting just because the paper is not pulled or taped down tightly. So you want to make sure that the paper is really tight on the tumbler or around the tumbler, just so you prevent ghosting. I don't know if you can tell, but there is a little bit of a gap in between the paper and the tumbler, and that does create a ghosting effect. And ghosting means it won't sublimate entirely. Like, it will sublimate a little bit, but you will be able to see where it didn't sublimate correctly. After I sublimated a few tumblers after this one, you can pretty much almost get away with not taping the bottom or the top. The reason why I did it with this one is because my print was not lining up. But if you have a perfectly printed design and it does line up, you might get away with not taping the top or the bottom. But if you do tape or decide to tape both ends, you just want to make sure you put the tape on really tight and you rub it just so there is no gap in between the sublimation paper and the top or the bottom of the tumbler. Like I said, after pressing a few tumblers, what I found to be very helpful Once you're done pressing the entire tumbler, you take the ends, make sure you do have heat resistant gloves because this tumbler does get very, very hot. Make sure you have the gloves on, and once you take it out, once you're done pressing the entire design, you can press just the edges for about 5 to 10 seconds, really depending on what press you have and the pressure of your tumbler press. So you want to press the top and the bottom, but just the edges, just to prevent ghosting and so you can get a perfectly sublimated top and end. If your print is the measurements exact for your tumbler, then you will not see the gap that you can see here between the sublimation paper and the tumbler. Like I said, it's because my printer printed wrong. But if you have the perfect dimensions of your print and tumbler, then you should have no gap. The only way you could possibly get a gap is if you're not taping your paper tight enough. If you need to trim, go ahead and trim, but remember, trim little by little, because if you trim way too much, you might not get a good lineup at the end. Also, you do not need to add this much tape. I learned the hard way that you don't. If you get your design perfectly lined up, you do not need to add this much tape. I added this much tape just because, like I said, my print was not the correct size for my tumbler, and I just went ahead and went ham with the tape. But you do not need to add this much tape. It's also not convenient because there is certain tape that will stain. Like once you press your design, you will be able to see the markings of the tape, and you want to prevent that as well. So you do not need to use this much tape. The little you use can probably even give you a better design than as to when you're adding that much tape. And also, you want to prevent ink transferring onto your tumbler press. So I just went ahead and took a piece of parchment paper and I wrapped it around, because sometimes you will see the ink through the sublimation printer. So to prevent your tumbler press from getting gross and just like ink everywhere, you want to go ahead and make sure that you do wrap it in either butcher paper or parchment paper. When working with heat, you want to protect your hands by wearing heat resistant gloves. I think these came with my press. I'm not sure. I know they're really inexpensive on Amazon, so I will go ahead and link them down below. So you want to press this according to the recommendations for the specific tumbler you have. Like I said before, this did not turn out the way I wanted it to. I think 400 is way too much for a tumbler press. Not a tumbler press, but the tumbler itself. I actually figured out that 363 is probably the perfect temperature for me and for my tumblers. And also, instead of 80 seconds, I believe I do now like 61 or 60, and it presses so much better. Like I said, every tumbler and every heat press is different, so you want to make sure you check with the company which recommendations they recommend. So like I said, what works for me might not always work for you, so you just want to make sure that you get your temperature, your settings, your pressure correctly to your preference. Everybody has a different method, has a different way of doing this. This is what worked for me and didn't work for me. Like I said, I wanted to just keep this video as raw as I can because I'm not perfect. Sometimes, honestly, my work sometimes is not perfect. I do make everything with my hands, so mistakes do happen, error does happen. So like I said, everything is always trial and error. And even if you do get something perfect, you could do 100 and then 101 won't be perfect. It does happen, and that's okay. That should be your way of keep pushing, keep going, don't give up, keep trying, because eventually perfection does happen. When removing the tape, you want to be sure that you do not my dog sneezing in the background. When you're removing the tape, you want to make sure you do not scratch the design because you can, and that's not repairable. At least I don't think it is. Like I said, you also do not need to add this much tape. I only did because my design was not printed perfectly. So just be very careful when you are removing the tape. And you do kind of want to remove the tape when it's still a little bit hot or warm, just because it makes the tape easier to come off. And sometimes if you get lucky, you can even pull the tape all at once because it does stick together. The heat makes it stick together. So yeah, I just want to be very mindful when you are removing the tape. As for tape, it all really just depends, I think, on the brand, your tumbler press, and your tumbler, because I have tried 3 different kinds and only 2 are my favorite. The Cricut one and then the PYD Life. I have tried the one that looks like yellow or brownish, and I do not like that one because I kind of find that it does leave the markings on the sublimation print, and I don't like it. It ruins it, and I feel like in a way it absorbs the ink instead of it transferring onto your product. And you want to prevent that too, because like I said, you can see the tape lines once you remove your sublimation print. So that is pretty much it for this tumbler. Like I said, I did not like the way it turned out, but I went ahead and added a small thin layer of rhinestones at the bottom just to cover up the seam that was not aligned. But other than that, it turned out okay. It wasn't too bad, but like I said, with sublimation, you just want to be very patient. So that is it for today's video, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and turn on the notification bell so you're notified whenever we upload. Thank you.